Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep the conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing your questions and comments on the Facebook event or on the YouTube event. Chats are always fun, but remember, your chats may show up on the show. And as always, if you can't catch us live, catch the replay or in your favorite podcasting app. You know me, my name is John Ruark, and I am a past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, Jason Richards. How's it going, Jason?
I'm good. How are you, John?
Great.
Awesome. Jason Richards here. I'm a past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. Glad to be here.
Awesome. And last but not least, Joe Martinez. Hey, Joe.
You always say that, but am I not the least? Because I'm always last.
You know, the first shall be last and the last shall be first.
Oh, that's deep.
First is the worst. Second is the best.
Third is
from the mop to the top.
With the hairiest chest. That's right. Joe Martinez. Let's see. I'm a past master too from Manassas Lodge, number 182 in Manassas, Virginia, a member of other things. And today I'm sporting, since everybody likes to talk about hats on social media, I'm sporting a hat from Alberta Freemasons. So Grand Lodge of Alberta. We haven't talked about it, right? Have I been on since I've been to Canada?
No.
Canada is loving us Continental Freemasons. I know. Our other host will be showing up in Canada soon. But Canada is an awesome place for Masonry. Let me tell you.
That's great.
Yeah.
I saw some pics. They look good. Look fun.
Dude. Great people, great brothers, awesome hats. Love you guys. Right now you're coming in right above Texas in terms of your hat wear. So
I'm here for the hats. And they're not fezzes.
They're not fezzes. That's right.
No. Cool. All right. Special shout out goes to the patrons who support the show. You guys are awesome and rock my socks. So head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable, chip in a few bucks, join our Secret Squirrel Facebook group, and nerd out about books and stuff.
And hats.
And apparently hats now.
And Esotericon.
Oh, yeah. That's going up.
First speaker was announced this week.
That's right. Another speaker coming tomorrow.
Joe, let's talk about Esotericon. What's Esotericon?
Talk about Esotericon. Yeah. So fans of the show, you know that, let's see, every single one of us is also a host of Esotericon, which is a esoteric conference, kind of like the Masonic cons, but we really focus on the more mysterious and weirder side of Freemasonry and other initiatic orders. And
Esotericon is not a Masonic conference.
It is not a Masonic conference.
Focus on Freemasonry. We focus on spooky shit, and it's fun.
It is, but there's a lot of synergies, and yes, all roads lead to the top of the same mountain. So, yep, June 15th in Northern Virginia. Come on down. We still have some tickets left, a few, I think. But yeah, speakers every 3 days. And if you're a Patreon, you will get the notice a couple hours before everybody else. So another reason to chip in some money and keep us on for another 10 years. So right on.
10 years. The decade of Joe's hats.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, cool. I'm looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward to Tarot Card of the Week.
I'm not.
Of course you are.
Tarot Card of the Week.
Oh, man. I almost want to play it again.
Oh, please.
All right.
Enough.
All right. So this week, our tarot deck of the week is the Tarot of the Dead. Tarot de los Muertos.
Ooh.
And,
Did
John,
that right?
You got me this one, actually. I think this may have been a Christmas present. But lots of cool symbolism around the Mexican Day of the Dead. Really interesting replacements for the traditional arcana. But
you had me at skulls.
Ooh.
Skulls galore. What do we got?
Skulls galore. Today we have the Wheel of Fortune. La Rueda de la Fortuna.
Fortune.
Fortuna, excuse me.
De la fortuna. Yeah.
Nice.
Change.
Well, that's a great one.
Change.
Change.
Change is a coming.
Big change. Like it's more than a culmination. It's like a culmination getting ready to go into the next phase. Right. It's
Or like an
one of the-
upheaval, cycles, upheavals,
Mhm.
many things.
Well,
For
it's also the end of the hero's journey that started with the Fool card.
Right.
And so it is the culmination of everything that the Fool has learned throughout his journey through the major arcana.
Mhm.
And it's time to begin anew.
I like
And
it.
get ready for judgment. Mm-hmm.
Like it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Super cool.
I like.
Especially given the upcoming eclipse.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, you know what's crazy is spend some time on TikTok today in my personal space, aka the bathroom, and yeah, stuff's getting weird on the Masonic
Seriously.
TikTok land when it comes to what people are saying and what
You're
people are
right.
claiming, and it's getting weird. It's getting weird, even for me, and I'm the weird one. It's getting weird. So I had to take a break and go to some cooking videos.
So what like solar cult have you joined?
I've joined none, but there are people
There's still time. You still
who
got
say
time.
they are who advertise themselves as Freemasons. They're just getting weird. They're getting weird.
Mhm.
Yeah. And they're branded, they're branded. They have things.
Yeah.
So it's weird.
So any plans for the eclipse?
Not me.
Oh.
John and I have plans for the eclipse.
Ooh.
Bye, Joe.
Yeah.
I think we might be headed for a rendezvous with Mike the intern.
Yay. Who, if
Yay.
you remember, did a great job with his Masonic astronomy episode. So I'm going to play with some toys. He's going to bring all his telescopes and gear, and it's going to be so much fun. So I'm looking forward to that.
Only like a 30% chance of rain.
Fingers crossed. It'll still be fun.
Is anywhere in the path getting absolutely clear weather? Like I've been watching the news reports in our favorite cities.
I'd imagine Waco will probably be pretty clear.
Yeah. But I know some other places in Texas are still having like a 30-40% chance of rain. So yeah, it's good. Either way, we're gonna have a good time.
Yeah,
that's right.
That's the plan. That's the plan. Cool. What I wanted to do was wanted to have Esotericon during the eclipse, have this big culmination, this big event, have a big bonfire, sacrifice some goats. It was going to be a great time, but we'll just we'll
Capitalism ruined that.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All
So
right,
instead of hanging with you guys, I'm sitting here with some reworked 3D glasses and praying that it's not crappy out. So
all right.
Have much fun.
All right. Well, good luck. Good luck.
We'll miss you.
Okay. So
only slightly.
Speaking of change and progression, let's talk about a matter of degrees, how we actually progress as Freemasons through the fraternity. So we all know that Masons have 3 degrees: standard apprentice degree, fellowcraft degree, master Mason degree. However, you may find it interesting to know that the way one passes from EA to fellowcraft or fellowcraft to master Mason may not always be the same way as a member in your state or a member of a different state.
Or a member of your same jurisdiction.
Yeah, exactly. Or in your same district even. Exactly. So tonight we're going to talk about how does one progress through Freemasonry, and what are the pros and cons of the different ways of making progress in Masonry. So do you want to go best to worst, or worst to best?
You're putting a lot of opinion on that.
Yeah,
it was a loaded question. I love it.
Get me a little verklempt.
Verklempt. All right. How if I just go straight to the elephant in the room. 1 day classes. Let's start there. Because that seems to be the fastest way that someone can go through those 3 degrees. Right? So
I hate them. What?
oh, your mic was breaking up, but yeah, it sounded like
we do not hate or otherwise dislike 1 day conferral Masons.
correct. 100%.
God,
It's
no.
not your fault.
We
Some of my
are not
favorite,
a fan of 1 day conferral classes as a process.
outside of these 2 cuckoo birds, some of my favorite Masons went through 1 day classes.
Exactly.
And they are some of the coolest, most philosophical, most well-read, awesome brothers who are just fabulous to sit in the lodge room until 2 o'clock in the morning with. So yeah, not your fault.
So one thing that I do like that that most jurisdictions try to counter for when they do a 1 day class where you get all 3 degrees in 1 day, they just don't push you off into a lodge and say best of luck. They actually try to give you some amount of homework, mentoring, coaching. It may be different by jurisdiction, but in general, what have you seen helps to offset the rush through the degrees?
Well, that one-on-one mentorship is absolutely critical, John. The idea that you are paired with one or more master masons in the lodge who are able to take you on that journey and lead you on that journey through even a formal catechism, question and answer process, or just through working with you to understand the symbolism of the degrees and the organization is yeah, thanks Ken. Here's a book. Good luck, kid. That's what we hope doesn't happen.
Right.
That's what we know does happen a lot,
unfortunately.
Unfortunately. But going back to when I was progressing through the degrees back, goodness gracious, like 13 years ago, I had a very, very strong mentor in David Hill, and like he and I would meet 4 or 5 times a week to go through things.
Right.
And I recognize that not everyone has access to that great of a mentor in lodge, but what if everyone did?
Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think we're talking about progression in general, but I was thinking more about what do we collectively as Masons do with the brothers that do go through a 1 day class, right?
That's exactly what I was trying to get to.
And so to Jason's
mentorship.
I don't think a lot of 1 day conferral Masons are afforded the opportunity to meet with the mentor 4 to 5 times a week. You know what I mean?
No, not at all. I was kind of
got,
contrasting that with what we're going to talk about with conferral Masons.
Absolutely. And I think even Masons or craft lodge Masons who don't know what a 1 day class or a blue lightning it's called in some other jurisdictions, or a festival or a grand master's class, whatever they're called, even if you've never seen them before, you've seen them before in other bodies, right? Like if you have joined the York Rite, that's much more common, where you get all of the Royal Arch degrees in 1 day, and you're there from 7 in the morning until 1 o'clock in the morning. And 50 dudes are in a room and they're getting all the degrees. So you've seen it before, maybe just not in the form that we're talking about today.
Still a bad idea.
Now, I do know that some jurisdictions will still require that the catechism get learned, right? But it's just within a certain time frame after the 1 day class. But it's at least you get over the hump, so that way, you can get right to work and knock that out. So I think that's better than nothing, right?
Sure.
But still not optimal from the whole initiatic experience.
Well, let's talk about that, right? Because is it and I've had a change of heart over the years, and I think we're waiting for Robert to come on, but he was one of the people that convinced me that because I was always big opponent. No, one day classes are terrible and blah, blah, blah. And, had all these negative things to say about it. But he was the one who kind of turned the corner for me when it came to how meaningful they were and how useful they can be in certain circumstances. Right. And like we said at the very beginning, we've met and speak of the devil and he shall appear. Boom. My man.
Just don't call him late for dinner.
Yes, he sensed me talking about him. But yeah, I was just saying, Robert, how you were, we had a long talk one night and you were the one who kind of turned my brain around on one-day conferrals and Masons who go through that process, right? And he kind of likened it to, and he really drove it home for me. He was like, well, what they do in Eleusis, they had thousands of people, taking, walking up the sacred way and walking through the telesterion and then walking into the amphitheater. What did they do? They didn't
still walk.
But they did walk. Yes, absolutely. But, but then they basically had an exemplar candidate and everybody else sat there and watched and they participated in that kind of way. And I never thought about it like
they
that.
Also had entheogens, so
they did, and Kikeon, and they were definitely flying high, which
it is interesting, like you think about those entheogens that you're mentioning, John, and Joe, you mentioned Kikeon, and it's kind of funny because like I look up these old recipes for things like Kikeon, and it's really super ambiguous, very opaque in the way they describe this stuff being made. I mean, George Washington's beer recipe, which is like, if you've ever read it, is like a train wreck. We know less than that about this stuff, but there are guys on TikTok or on YouTube who claim like, oh, it's this mixture of oats and this mixture of wine, and you do this stuff. And it's like, yeah, I'm not real sure about that because I'm pretty positive this stuff was psychoactive. And, the amount of wine that you're getting in with this stuff, I don't think it's going to cut it. And what did they use?
The ball burns off.
Yeah. So they said, well, maybe there's ricin in some of the oat or the wheat that they're using. And I was like, well, that would make sense. But to your point, or to John's point, right? Like, yeah, they're sitting there in the theater, but they're also
it's in 3D.
Tripping balls.
It's in 3D. Yeah, in 3D. Which I mean, I kind of was when I went through the Scottish Rite. The 4th degree, the 4th through the 32nd. Like the first night I went was a Thursday after working first shift, and then staying up all day and then into the night. So I was like, ooh, wonky. I was like Jason when he got his first degree.
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, am I gonna have to tell that story on there? No, I had a herniated disc in my back for my EA degree, and I had taken some legally prescribed to me painkillers and before my degree so I could get through it. And my EA degree was a fascinating experience. This is amazing. I'm like, it's like I'm in an actual quarry. And then like I remember going and sitting in on my first EA just as an EA, like viewing it for someone else, and I was just like, this is different. Okay.
Yeah, and I mean Gary Neal mentioned it. I mean, I don't think it matters whether you're sitting in the audience watching the degree for the first time or you're participating in it. You're not remembering 75% of what happened there. It is just too much, regardless if it's 1 degree or 3 degrees in one day. It's a fire hose. You're not going to remember. And Jason touched on something super important that I think we can all agree on is it's usually that first degree you see after you've been through it is when you start to make all those connections.
Oh,
like,
oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh my God, look at that. And all that stuff starts to come to light. No pun intended.
Well, then, like, I think about this, and we're looking at the individual experience. And somebody in the chat said, Eddie Lee Reed, I'm going to call you out. You said, I feel a one-day class is a sellout to Freemasonry. And so to that is one way to look at it if we have to define what Masonry is. And so if Masonry is a modern interpretation of a death rite, then yeah, you can't say no, because you have to go through the experience.
Right.
The problem that we have, I think, is that so many Grand Lodges have so many differing opinions about what Masonry is and what it's supposed to do.
To include the Grand Lines.
Yeah, you can't find continuity in one singular Grand Lodge, let alone anyone else. So, you know, Joe, yeah.
No, I said that in jest to just chime in on Eddie's point, but I mean, I've been to degrees, I've sat in degrees, I will not name names or lodges, but I've been in rooms with some of you, and I've seen really shitty degrees done, you know, and it was just one candidate, it was one night, but I felt bad for the candidate by the end of it. I'm like, that was a terrible experience, and I don't know if he realizes it at the time, but that is equally as detrimental to the initiatic experience as a one-day class. You know, it really is.
Okay, so we've talked about one-day classes and how we try to supplement the progression experience of actually making progress in Masonry through mentorship and potentially catechism, learning the catechism or an abbreviated portion of the catechism per jurisdiction. So then the next question becomes, how long does it take if you do the singular, let's just say the entered apprentice degree? How long does it take to go from your EA degree to the fellowcraft degree?
Well, before we get to that, I'd like to talk about something that Ohio does for some of its one-day conferral Masons as well. And they actually have a Masonic principles exam for the EA and fellowcraft, where they actually have a 3-part exam where the first part is they give the candidates some reading material and ask them some quick questions about it.
Is this just for one-day conferrals?
No, I think this is for anyone who goes through like an alternative non-catechism method, but it can include
gotcha.
one-day conferrals. Part 2 is essentially learning to read the Ohio Masonic cipher, and working through some of
the cheat sheet.
Yep, working through some of the main parts of your obligation in that Masonic cipher. And then the third is kind of more of a philosophical writing exercise, kind of akin to some of the Master Craftsman courses.
Interesting.
So really, yeah, it's interesting. And the idea here is that, the brethren need to come to Lodge prepared to, answer these questions and talk through them with, with the respective brethren.
If we could stay on that thread just for a second, I was not raised, I did not go through the degrees in Virginia, but I'm a Virginia Mason. And I've been through at least three one-day conferrals since I've been a Virginia Mason. And I will say, again, I know we've been throwing shade at the whole one-day conferral process, but not at the people. I've seen different examples of it being implemented with different degrees of success. Like I can speak for Virginia folk. We had a mandatory one-day class in the state during COVID, right? Because we had all these candidates that were waiting for degrees and lodges were closed and they wouldn't let us get together to do that. So finally they put together a one-day conferral class, and it was really brief, the training and the mentoring and the progression, to be really honest. But then we had one, what was it, in 2022? Was it? When our Grand Master was actually a one-day conferral Mason. And he espoused and talked about that a lot, being a one-day conferral Mason. But I felt like that time, and I was way more involved in that one, especially in the mentoring classes, they were a lot more thought out, the whole learning about the degrees and the mentoring, and they put structure around it.
So even in the same jurisdiction, they can tweak how it progresses.
2-3 years apart, they were completely different. We would get the hey, here's all the lists of things that the candidate needs to know and learn and stuff to move on. They were very different, and it was kind of cool. Like a lot of people really enjoyed those mentoring classes that we had for our new one-day Masons. And we were actually seeing a lot of non-one-day Masons that were showing up and learning things too that they'd never heard before. So, you know, there's a lot of opportunities to learn things, but it just goes back to that point. At the end of the day, it really doesn't matter, because if you're getting that fire hose experience, you're not getting anything out of that initial touch, right? It's those subsequent follow-up touch points.
What about this, right? Like, I know I said we're staying on this one day ODC too long, but what about, I know that I said, like, well, what about Eleusis and how that was? I think there is one key difference that we can come to agree on, and that is we at least know that those mysteries were likely designed to be portrayed that way. And so that also stems from them knowing what this was supposed to be for. Yeah, it's not a one-day class episode. And Masonry, say a festival just for the first 3 degrees, let's say, was not designed to be a one-day class. It is, as Jason might point out, an innovation. And
oh, it is.
So while we can kind of justify it, and like I said, I know lots of one-day class dudes who blow me away contemplatively, and
Sure, yeah,
all, you know, and it just, yeah, I mean, it serves a purpose of some kind, but it's just not for me. So where were you going with your question there?
Are we ready to move on from one day classes?
Let's move on.
We've done a couple episodes. Okay, I just want to make sure we don't kill half. Oh, look, we killed half of the episode. Moving on. So,
half your face.
I'm going to ban the word one day class or festival after this. So you're going to be in timeout.
You're a festival.
How long does it take to progress between your EA and Fellowcraft degree?
Pennsylvania, 3 months.
Really?
So I looked.
No.
Oh
No, actually, as of this year, and a new edict or directive from the Grand Master of the Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, EA and Fellowcraft degrees are to be done on the same day.
What? I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I was up in Pennsylvania Lodge last
half-day classes
month. Yeah, and they read that order from the Grand Master that EA and Fellowcraft degrees are to be done on the same day now.
Curveball aside, it depends.
Your mileage may vary.
Yes.
So I'm going to let you do Maryland, since you've got a new baby Mason in Maryland, but I've got DC here. So the only requirement in DC is that there has to be a lunar month between degrees.
So that's the minimum, right? The minimum amount of time before you can progress in DC from EA to Fellowcraft, for example.
And each lodge implements that differently. Like my lodge in DC, we actually we ask our candidates to write papers in between degrees. So there's no memorization requirement. It's you write a paper.
We'll get there.
A degree, and then you present it. So and it takes longer than a month. You know, like it usually takes these guys a long time to come up with a well-researched paper and deliver it and present it in lodge. But and some other lodges, it's literally lunar month to lunar month.
Right.
But that's DC. And then I've also got Texas, not wearing your hat wear because it hasn't shown up yet. Texas, Brad Billings. So I've got some intel here from our good friend. They have catechism, and it's EA is about 75 questions and answers, and then Fellowcraft and Master Mason are shorter, and they are allowed a maximum of 1 year.
Gotcha.
In their work.
So that is similar to Maryland, right? So my dad just got his EA a couple of weeks ago. I'm working with him, and he was informed that he has 1 year to learn the Entered Apprentice Catechism and then present it in lodge. So I guess after, if you get to that point, then I'm sure there's some sort of appeals or waiver process you could go through. In Virginia, I believe that time frame is about 6 months, right? And in which you can ask for an appeal just for another 6 months or so. That's what I've heard. I've not tried it, but up to 1 year. Is that what I'm hearing?
You can ask for it. We actually just went through this and argued with people about it. So yeah, they recommend 6 months to learn your catechism. You can get one extension by the master. If you need more than one extension, then that has to go to the vote of the lodge, and you have to put it in writing and all this crazy crap. So
gotcha.
Yeah, so 6 months. What else do we have? You did Maryland, Virginia. Who else do we have? What's Illinois?
Yeah, RJ.
Well, first of all, I hope you appreciate my background, because this was my background for the 1,000-yard stare I was giving after Jason said they put the first and second degree on the same day.
What do you call half a festival?
Good God. I thought you were going to say like they made it longer. And I was like, oh, good.
Nope.
Wow, I'm just going to punch myself in the crotch.
What is it in Illinois?
Illinois is you have to progress. It's not official. Like it's a recommendation that they become a Master Mason within 6 months.
Become a Master Mason within 6 months.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so they do that, I think, as a way to say it keeps you engaged, and hopefully progressing. We do have some things in our rule books about keeping guys from like letting them go because they have a failure to progress.
Okay.
So we have that nomenclature within the jurisdictions, like codes and rules, but 6 months is generally what they'd like. And that it consists of, like, for instance, myself, I think I went through what was very typical and what they wanted. That's what happened to me. I went in, petitioned, I got my investigation done, first degree, learned my catechism. Then the next month I returned the catechism, long form. Yep. Long form in front of the lodge. Then they kicked me out. And then I got dressed and I got my second degree. And then I got my third degree the same way. But actually my third degree took me 2 months to learn that one. It was a little longer, and I took a break. So shame on me. But yeah, like all in all, I think I took the 1 to 4 months.
Okay. So
about 8 months for me.
Back in 2016, I did a little Masonic survey. It's kind of probably time to redo it again. I say that about once every 2 years. It's time to do it again. Which I flat out
yelled at by fewer Grand Lodge officers this time.
That is true. Where I did ask, one of the questions was, what was the time frame between your EA and fellowcraft degree? And I just kind of opened it up. And here's the results. So how many months later after your EA degree did it take for you to become a fellowcraft? And 40% took 1 month, where 22%, 2 months, and it goes down from there. Another interesting thing is there is the 6 month. It goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. So that's an interesting outlier, that the 6 month mark either was more popular because of a mental barrier, or it was an actual policy barrier, like some Grand Lodges said, okay, you are going to get your fellowcraft within 6 months, right? So
yeah, you could cross. If you have jurisdictional data, it'd be interesting to cross section that to see what happens.
Exactly.
And also, what you're saying was an update. It would be super interesting to see what happens to this data if you do it now, because you're going to get COVID results.
Yes, that's true. Well, so which is interesting, because now 0 shows up, which could be part of a one-day class, or could be, hey, they were really super awesome, but more than likely it was a festival. So I should I should put a coin in the swear jar because I'm saying one day
Don't
class.
say the word festival.
But right
You
after
know what?
that,
I will do this for you while you're on. I will find out the percentage of men, at least by 2020, who are ODC. So you just go
okay,
ahead.
in Illinois, awesome. And then right after 0 months is a whole year. So that's interesting. That about 2.33% actually took 12 months to progress to the fellowcraft. So we still have some, some ones who do it on a very slow scale. Which leads to the next question. Okay, well, is it the same for fellowcraft and master mason? And the results do fall on almost exact same pattern, almost. But yes, 40%. It takes. Of people said it took 1 month from fellowcraft to master mason. 23% took 2 months, and so on and so forth. So I think that was interesting. So that tells me at least the majority of members are going 1 month between the degrees. So you can go from profane to master mason in about 2 months. I did also ask about how many months later does it take to go to an appendant body, but I'm going to hold that thought until we go there. So thoughts on that? Thoughts on that data?
It makes sense with the numbers that we have. I mean, it's the zeros kind of threw me off. So I can only imagine that they're 1 day conferral masons for both of those numbers,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's not seeing anything funky there.
And then, but I did like to see some of the 12-monthers. They were almost a whole year between the degrees. So that's.
I was almost a whole year between both of my degrees.
Nice.
For several. Well, it wasn't by choice. I mean, I was in the Army at the time, so I did meet with my catechism coach a lot, and but yeah, when I did meet with him, we would bang it out real quick, and then I'd move on. But yeah, it took me 2 years from being initiated to race.
All right, so let's talk about any additional proficiency requirements. And so you started to talk about that, Joe, with the fact that although the Grand Lodge has a suggested or recommended time frame to advance, your lodge put additional requirements on top of that.
Yes.
Of the paper.
Oh yeah. So
yes, your DC lodge.
Yeah, absolutely. So for the DC lodge, like I said, all the code book says is a lunar month has to pass between degrees. So you can't do 2 degrees in 1 month. But
right.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool thing about the Grand Lodge of DC is it's very, very cosmopolitan in terms of how it does its masonry. Each lodge has their own flavor, which is kind of different for, you go right across the river and it's very masonry is the same no matter where you go, right? Whether you're at the top of the state or the bottom of the state, it's almost identical. So it's really interesting to see that. But yeah, some lodges have paper research requirements. Some do have memorization requirements. So it's really, again, cosmopolitan. That's just the best word to describe it.
So you could have a different experience than someone in a different lodge even.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So is that better or worse?
Well, I think it depends on what you're looking for, right?
Exactly.
Like I know, I mean, I can only speak to the lodges I've been to and the brothers that I know, but like, for example, I know, we've all sat in lodge together when we were, when I was master, not that long ago, when we had people walking in the door, and Jason was there for some of those. We had people would come in and sit down and have dinner with us and talk to us and all that stuff. And the first thing we would do is ask them is, have you visited any other lodges? And if you didn't, we'd love you to come back, but go visit at least 2 other lodges in the area. Like, don't just come here because this is the closest place to your house. Like, each lodge has their own personality and cliques, for lack of a better term, and atmosphere. And in DC, I think that's really a lot more obvious. You know what I mean? Like people
Right.
will do some serious lodge shopping in DC from what I've seen, you know, like, and people
Good.
are seekers for much longer periods of time than in other jurisdictions. You know, like you get some guys today, they walk in, it's like, hey, I want a petition. It's like, well, how about your name first? That'd be good, you know, and where you live, and you know, but some people are ready. But I've seen people that have done tons of research walking into DC lodges, like, hey, I came to this lodge because, you know, it's got a lot of history, or it's got this, or it's got that, or hey, you guys are the weird ones that do weird education every month, you know. So they've done their homework by the time they've gotten there. So I think that speaks a lot to how they progress their candidates. I think they're kind of prepared by the time they put a piece of paper down, you know.
That's good.
Well, whereas I have been to a lodge or two where the candidate comes in and they're like, oh, here's my petition. I really just want to join the shrine, so I already got people to sign for me. You'll do my degrees, right?
Those are my faves. My faves.
Yeah, courtesy work for the shrine.
Yeah, well, we see that happen quite a bit, in particular when they don't hide behind anything. I believe there are some appendant body affinity lodges that exist solely for that purpose. I know.
Sure.
I believe there's a Scottish Rite version up in Massachusetts. I know here in Illinois we have Medina Lodge, which meets in Medina Temple, and they chartered not too long ago, and that's what they do. You know, it is interesting. I will give you those numbers, John. I have 50,000 unique IDs as of 2020, and about 7,800 individuals whose passing and raising date are the same. So about 15%.
Wow.
Our ODC. Yeah.
Wow.
Of current active.
Yeah.
Masons. Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's all what you make of it, for sure. Right. So we are talking about the process to get in. And of course, once you're in, that's a whole different ball of wax about how you're prepared, how you're studying, how you're being mentored, etc. We've hit that nail on the head multiple times.
Have you guys seen, in addition to any kind of catechism work in between degrees, requirement for educational papers?
I have not.
This was an idea that was tossed around a little bit here in Illinois. We had a lodge that, you know, I guess, I don't know if it was part of their bylaws, but that's how they operated. If for a man to like go from entered apprentice to fellowcraft, he was required, in addition to his catechism work, whether he did, you know, long form, short form, or just, we also have a question and answer type form as well for those who can't memorize. They would give a short paper on something related to the entered apprentice degree or fellowcraft. Before being, you know, deemed qualified to move to the next degree.
I like it. So I'm going to move on because we're getting kind of long in the time here. But also in my data, I did have how many months after your raising did you wait to join an independent body? Because, you know, we all know the joke, you know, if as soon as you're raised, there's people running at you with petitions in hand. Joe looks a little skeptical.
I'm so skeptical of this. I really am. Sorry. It's just like you just see people get bombarded.
Well, there's your zero down the bottom. So 5% of respondents said they were immediately handed a petition and joined an independent body. So there's some data there. Now, one thing that jumped out at me, like, so the top 3 answers were a whole year, right? 12 months. 21% of people said they waited a whole year to join an independent body. 17% said they waited half a year to join an independent body. And then 11% just said they waited a month. Yeah, they waited one whole month. So
There is a law, a Masonic law that was put into place, and Brother Patrick Day confirmed it, but nobody pays attention to it, and it requires you to wait a year before you're allowed to join an appendant body in Colorado.
In Colorado, yeah. So that's
But
the question: is it
nobody abides by it, nobody cares, nobody even knows about the
Really?
law, really. Yeah.
Interesting?
It's kind of like, it's a Tuesday rule.
Yeah.
You're on Tuesday, gone by Wednesday.
So I did have the foresight to think about the follow-up question to that. That was, given what your answer was on the previous question, do you feel that the length of time between your raising and joining your appendant body was appropriate? So this was a Goldilocks thing. This was one on the scale. The left side is no, it wasn't. It was too early. Number 3 was too late, and number 2 in the middle is just right. Joe, question.
Dr. Ruar, question.
Mhm.
So how many of that 74% comprise that big number on the previous slide?
I don't have the answer here, but actually, I will take that back. I did look at just the people, the 74% that said it was just right. The median and the mode of that 74% were 12 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So that's kind of a cool piece of data that, although there was a variety of people that answered that, the median and the mode of that other one was a year. So there's data that says, personally, they felt like it was an appropriate amount of time. I am not recommending any Grand Lodge make any official policies based off of that, right? Because every man's journey is different, especially after they're raised. But I just found that piece of data interesting.
Well, it sounds like some jurisdictions have put laws around it,
Yeah, and some are considering it.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Now, what if you had to write a paper before you could join an independent body? There you go. Now you're cooking with gas.
The only paper the appendant bodies want are your dollars.
It's our greenbacks and your wet signature.
Same thing with Grand Lodges. Yeah, so you can get your dude's card.
Dude.
Mm-hmm.
Robert, stop putting things into the chat after I've already said them.
Well, I mean, RJ said something funny, but it kind of goes back to stuff that you talked about, John, when it comes to retention and things. I know today's show is not about retention, but and you've done, and we've seen statistics, and you've been a part of those where we talk about, and I'm going to say the bad word again, one-day classes, and the keeping people engaged and how long do they choose to stay in Masonry. There's really no difference. And I think we had, who do we have on the show? Damn it. Most Worshipful Stoops.
Stoops. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So remember when we had him on the show and we talked about one-day classes and retention, and I think he did a 10-year long study, right? Or did it go back into the 90s?
In his jurisdiction, yeah.
Yeah, in his jurisdiction, about how the retention numbers were damn near identical between, one-day conferral Mason.
And even before him, Chris Hodap has been known to say that publicly multiple times. I don't know where he got his data, but yeah. Okay, so you got 2 data points that say that there's no difference in retention depending on, the fast pass or the traditional method.
The fast pass.
To which my response would be, then what other externalities are we gaining or losing by changing the process of initiation?
Mm-hmm.
If retention is the same, so we know there's not a benefit or detriment either way, let's go with that data. Then what else are we gaining or losing by changing the process?
And I think that's going to be a hard thing to nail down, because once again, you're talking about something that is both experiential,
bingo,
and spiritual,
mm-hmm.
and without without being able to codify exactly what Masonry is supposed to be and experience without the flowery language that surrounds it, we have no way to say we are completing the mission of this.
Right.
Instead, we had this kind of opaque, obtuse sort of. Yeah, there was the Scrubs episode back in the day, and he's like, "How do you know how much Tylenol to give?" And there's like all these drool all over the patient's face, and he's like, "We just throw a handful and whatever sticks." Like it's like the spaghetti rule. If the spaghetti sticks to the wall, it's ready, right? Like we don't know. We don't know what
we do, but we don't, right? And I know this is going to sound stupid, but I'm not knocking the administration of Masonry, but I kind of am, because we all do all the time. But I mean, you get the pithy quotes of, we take good men and we make them better, and be the change and all that stuff. I think from a large jurisdictional perspective, we get the flowery BS answers. We just do. It's like, we take good men and we make them better, and they're better in your community, and they're better at work, and they're better dads, and they're better whatevers.
We take good men and make them bitter.
But that's not where Masonry happens, right? Masonry doesn't happen at that level. Masonry happens at the lodge level. So I would say, and I know you're going to hate this answer, that it's the responsibility of the individual lodges to determine what type of, how they're going to deploy Masonry in the world, right? And they can choose to be a degree farm, and I have lodges in my area within driving distance that they do so many degrees a month, it's ridiculous. But it's the same 20 dudes that come to meetings every month, right? Not the 25 that they raise that month.
Freemasonry is like the worst franchise model ever, because
like
you have a different experience.
It's like Ray Kroc came in here and just pooped on everything. It's like, boom.
No, you can't do that because it is so different everywhere. Right. You can't. I mean, we're talking about like, oh my God. Could you imagine if every Grand Lodge had to use the same bathroom soap so that every bathroom at every Grand Lodge smelled exactly the same? So you knew when you were in a Grand Lodge bathroom. Usually I do know when I'm in a Masonic bathroom because nobody cleans them, so they all smell the same. But you know what I mean? Like, worst franchise ever. Universal Brotherhood.
Yes. It's global, except it's not.
It's like a universal remote. Like, it kind of works. The channel up might be the volume, but
nobody wants to spend the 10 minutes and find the programming to make it work right.
That's right.
God help you if you get a new TV.
Yeah, that's right. All right, good stuff. Let's go to final thoughts. So let's go controversial. What would be your preferred method of progression through the degrees?
We don't get to change the ritual, though.
I'll allow it.
Correct.
Oh, shit. All right.
Who wants to go first?
I'll go.
Alrighty.
Preferred method of progression through the degrees. Nobody would ever do it.
You're a grandmaster for a day.
I would. So I would require a period of time to work with a close Masonic mentor. There will be a catechism component involved. There will be an oral exam involved on the key points of the degrees, and there will be a short paper on a symbol or an aspect of the degree of the candidate's choosing that will be presented in lodge.
Oral. Nice. I like it.
I like it.
Good job.
It's not terrible.
Not the worst thing.
Wow.
Joe.
Oh, hi. Yeah, so don't mute me. I would say I'm going to kind of throw out the whole progression thing. yeah, I'm not a fan of rote memorization. Rote memorization does not make a good Mason. I'm sorry. I love ritual. Y'all know I love ritual. I love memorizing ritual and delivering ritual. But rote memorization does not make a good Mason. It just makes a Mason who can memorize stuff. So I would say get rid of catechisms, move towards mentorship / education in between the degrees. And that can have whatever time frame that it needs. Understand your obligation, and maybe write a paper. If you get the right type of lodge that loves that type of stuff, then yeah, write a paper. But that time frame can be amorphous, and each person's journey can be their own. So
nice.
Yeah.
Alrighty. RJ.
Okay. So I love Jason's answer. I think he's correct in that it would take our numbers drastically dipping to make that happen. I'm not so much worried about that. I think providing before you're a Mason class, so like a clear introduction, initiation, the beginning of a mentorship program, definitely some sort of orientation sessions that would take place, training materials that would come to you, put in some sort of facilitated experiential learning. So take them through a library, show them books, show them the things, talk about the stuff. If you have models, do that, or whatever. Study groups, have a study group. Make sure that the lodge has ongoing education, and that person is involved in the planning of those educational things. And then, of course, just continuing to engage them in like lodge activities, like community involvement in between degrees. I'd like to see participation. I might put participation over the memorization of stuff. I feel like memorizing stuff is awesome if you're Fahrenheit 451 and things, like you got to remember the stuff because nobody else does. But I think we have a good cadre of men and gentlemen who are memorizing those things, pretty well. So, yeah, kind of a mix, I guess, between Joe and Jason. Just nice. I would just more stuff in between that's required before. I would like to increase the requirements and the engagement in between degrees. So like it could be anything, but it has to be there. It can't just be like 1 and 2 on the first day, get your 3rd degree, you start signing petitions for other people, put in your points, get your diamond status, and order your friggin' car radio. But or your 1 year of Sirius XM or something for signing the most certificates. That kind of stuff is baloney to me, but
that's fair. Awesome. So I'm gonna take the average of what all 3 of the other gentlemen said, right?
Or the mean.
And the mean or the mode. One thing that sticks out to me too is just a standard, like to have an actual repeatable standard. So that would be, look at some data, which would be great to see what works across the different jurisdictions. But to say, I would not, for the progression to the 3rd degree, I would not leave it open-ended because we all know, like Parkinson's law is that work fills the time allotted. And if you just let someone never have a deadline, they'll just never get around to it. So give them a deadline, even if it's artificial. And as always, as Grandmaster, you can certainly waive things and have exceptions and appeal process for people who, change jobs or go, go overseas, whatever. But the standard should be something that's fixed. And so that standard, I guess, would be capped. And, I'll just ballpark it and say, that you have to, everyone has to kind of return the catechism within 6 months and present a presentation. So it's not limited to people who are good or bad at writing about what it actually means. Because I do think there is a lot of rote memorization. There is a lot of going through the process without internalizing it. So I want to make sure that they know both the ritual and the meaning. And so I would probably add that in as well. But if for whatever reason, something takes longer than 6 months just to progress through the degrees, because remember, after you're a Master Mason, it's a lifelong journey. We're still learning every day. And I think that's the beauty of Freemasonry. But we should tighten that up. We should standardize that so that we have a pipeline that we can actually track, monitor, and see how we can continually improve our administration. So with that, this was a lot of fun, really good discussion. Learned a lot about different jurisdictions. And I want to thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.
Wow.
Ooh, that was blue lightning.
Aha, you